Hello again. I will be with you for the next couple of hours, but now we are going to talk about tourism. What's the future of tourism? We are all concerned about it. We all need and want to travel, but for now, we know we can't. With me, I will have Luís Araújo from Turismo de Portugal, and then remote, we will have Grant Webster, Chief Executive Officer at Tourism Holding Limited New Zealand, for a lively dialogue. Luís, good morning.
Bom dia, good morning.
Thank you so much, Luís and Grant, for being with us today. We have some time to talk about tourism. What can we do now? We want to travel.
Well, and we want people to travel. I think we both want, we all want. And hopefully we will travel very soon.
When? Soon is when?
Well, we can travel right now.
That's the $1 million question.
No, the $1 million question is when will organizations and institutions and governments and countries and people and health with economy get to an agreement that you still can move without putting in danger health.
Okay.
And I think that's the biggest question. It's a matter of time and space. It's a matter of each day that passes is a very important day for the economy because we're losing tourists, and I'm speaking for any country.
Yes, everywhere.
And it's a matter of space because we need to move and health needs us to stay still. So I think we need the balance, but hopefully we will get that balance very soon.
Grant, what about New Zealand? I think it's the same thing as Portugal and the rest of the world.
Well, yes, we're very fortunate at this point in time to be an island. So,
yes.
New Zealand is a relatively large island. It's 10% larger than the UK, about 270,000 square kilometres, but only a population of 5 million. So we have our borders closed. They've been closed, obviously, since March this year. So we actually have COVID pretty well under control here. So we have really strong freedom of movement on a domestic basis. But clearly, international tourism is a key driver for our economy. It's a large employer, obviously, and we're certainly suffering right at the moment.
Yeah, but New Zealand is a huge example, a great example for all the world.
Yeah, look, I think it's tough though as well, right? So we've got exactly the same balance that Luís was just talking about. We desperately want our borders to open. We're looking very closely at Australia, our closest neighbour. Once they have it under control, we're looking to create our own Trans-Tasman bubble. And if we can do that, then we can see travel start to have some play and activity and try and boost that domestic economy in both countries.
But how can we make this bubble that Grant was talking about, Luís?
How can we give trust and confidence to people?
That's the main question.
And everyone talks about bubbles. I prefer to talk about clear information, testing, evaluating the possibilities, and how can we move from one place to the other with safety. And we have, the problem is this is changing very quickly. And we don't have time to do studies. We don't have time to analyze. We have to work with what we have. And the problem now is that we don't sit together and decide what to do in order to control.
Why are not we sitting together?
That's a very good question. That's a very good question. Why are we not sitting together? Because we're humans. And we are complicated.
No,
well, we're not complicated, but we have our focus, and we forget that sometimes our focus, and this is a very interesting topic also because of tourism. Because everyone, when we speak about tourism, we're either the victims or the villains. Always. We're always an activity that either destroys the environment or destroys the cities or suffers from the effects of mass devastation or climate change or whatever. And we have to think that we're responsible for the change. And I think, I mean, New Zealand is a very good example. I think Portugal is doing also their job in terms of thinking of the future and how can we deal with these new challenges and these new situations in order to have a more sustainable tourism. So I would say if each one would address not only its own responsibilities, but thinking about the other activities, other countries, other regions, then we would surely sit together and find solutions.
Mm-hmm. Grant, how is New Zealand connecting with other regions, other countries, other people to connect this land?
Yeah, look, we're very focused on what's happening here in our part of the world at the moment. Certainly, we know that our government is well connected and very much focused on the same issues. Testing is absolutely key. Border controls and what's happening from an airline perspective is all about the reopening of borders, which is obviously key. But I really agree that tourism has a place to look at a different future. I think, the previous conversation talking about ecosystems, tourism is a system as well. And it's time for us to challenge what that system is. It's time for us to actually say, yes, we need to recover right now, but at the same time, let's look out to the future. Let's look at community-based tourism. Let's look at something that's just beyond airline capacity and airlines driving everything. Let's look at what communities want. Let's look at culture and heritage. Let's look at what can actually benefit a multi-capital approach. And tourism is the place to do that. Tourism interfaces with education, it interfaces with the environment, it interfaces with agriculture. So we can be that centre point for an economy. We can be that centre point for society and for culture.
How is that connected? How is tourism connected with education, for example?
Yeah, so the way that we tell stories and the way that we connect and the way that we represent our culture starts in education. It starts with the young people and what they learn about their environment and how they learn to share those stories. Tourism is about experiences. So learning about those experiences, learning about the culture and heritage, and that flowing through into the way that people interact and how communities interact is actually all that tourism's about. Now, whether that be from a small local community to the next community, whether it be city to city or whether it be country to country, the same sort of thing applies. So we want to see people actually engaging with the stories and culture and experiences of country to be able to share that with others, fundamental to education, really.
This connection makes sense. This connection with the country, with the land, with the story. We have the chance to do it now.
I think this is considering the situation and the damage that this is doing to the activity, especially the tourism activity. This is the moment for two things. One, for tourism to say they have a role. We have a role in terms of regenerating our countries, our economies, our planet. That's one thing. And the other thing is recognizing that we have a bigger role than just an economic activity. And talking about education, tourism is about caring. Tourism is about caring the other, taking care of someone, but it's also about taking care of the planet. And there is no bigger example and best example of so many companies in so many parts of the world that are doing their job in small islands or in big countries, in very well-known destinations and very small destinations. And if we give the floor to those small companies, we will multiply this. And that's what we need to do exactly, and right now.
Is it hard to do it?
I would say it's very hard because whenever we talk about sustainability together with tourism, we think about big corporations and big hotel chains and airline companies and cruise ships. And 95% of the companies that work in tourism are very small companies. And when you said about training and about teaching, I couldn't find two areas that would be more similar, because we have to give the tools to these small companies to understand that their very small actions, wherever they are, have a very, very big impact even if it is by teaching someone to a tourist that comes to your country or that goes to some place, because a tourist does not behave the same way when they're outside their place that when they're on their place. And this is terrible, but this is human nature. It's not about tourism, it's human nature.
Yes, Grant.
I completely agree with everything. You're just going to get, I think, a really strong alliance between Portugal and New Zealand here tonight, or tonight, my time, sorry.
Yeah. These small companies are absolutely important. These, especially right now, because big companies are used to operate in big spaces, right? And now we have to reconnect and do everything differently.
We have to be open. And of course, we see big companies with chief sustainability officers and all these kind of things. I would say it's their responsibility, and we should be taking care also on how do we take this into very small companies and people that work in their own businesses. And I think that's where we get the best examples for this.
Do you have a good example right now? Do you remember someone?
We have some, and well, yesterday we've seen so many good examples,
Yes.
even situations, and what Elena said, that we have to go to nature basic things, and we see projects that don't have big air conditioning or that are worried about the balance, that are worried in using materials that are from the same place, that hotels that don't do big landscapes with big palm trees when you don't have palm trees in that place, or golf courses that use very limited water and use the landscape, the natural landscape of the place. This is the way to do things, and we have wonderful examples of this in Portugal. The problem is we're always focused on the negative part and not on the positive part.
Yes, but the question is also, people think about it? Do people think about it?
I think people...
It's so obvious for us, right?
We're very much focused on the negative part, and we should be more positive about... and I think tourism can bring this positiveness to the future. Because we care about the planet. We care about our territory, independently of what people say. There is no other activity that worries so much about its territory, because we depend on it. We depend on our culture, our authenticity, our landscapes, our sea, our mountains. We depend on it to live and as economic activity. That's why we're so committed on doing this and promoting this everywhere. But you have to think how to do it for the future. And yes. You have to do it in an innovative way. An industry that has been so very much focused on product and service has to think of technology, of digital, of sustainability, on balancing everything that they have at their disposition. If we can do that at the global level, and this is not a matter of one destination or one island, then we will succeed and we will regain the strength the tourism sector has in the entire world.
Grant, talking about technology and this huge opportunity, how can we use it for good, for our good, for tourism's good?
From a tourism perspective, I think there's a key thing around data, and data, the way people move and where people move, and congestion planning and destination management planning. Give a small example here in New Zealand. We had a small area where we were having issues with freedom camping, with people staying overnight and making a mess and so forth. So we created some basic AI technology with cameras, identifying when that area was full. And then we've got an app from a camper van perspective that we can track where people go, and we could find the people based on historical knowledge. We could find the people that were heading towards that direction, but we knew on a travel pattern about 200 kilometers out where they were going. So we gave them push notifications saying, we think you're heading to this destination. We want you to know that that's full. Here are some other recommended destinations. We had 85% success rate at moving people to an alternative destination. Technology for destination management, congestion management, moving people to where it's going to be best for their experience on a community basis. It's just only one example, but I think data and technology in managing flows, people, and capacity is a key one for tourism. I would say that on top of that, I think we need to turn to governments to look at tourism systems as well. And when I say systems from that perspective, to look at supply, to look at quality and standards, and to look at the right incentives and in some cases the right sanctions to drive the kind of behaviours that we're talking about tonight. Some research that New Zealand conducted said from a consumer perspective around the world, consumers still, travel's probably the last thing on even the most passionate, sustainability committed individuals. Travel's the last thing they want to give up. So there does need to be some government incentives and sanctions to help drive behaviour.
Yeah, that's exactly the opposite of the whole pandemic crisis, right? We are all giving up of everything, but not tourism. We want to travel.
And we've seen that. I mean, we didn't have connection with the UK for a period, for some weeks.
Yes,
and once we went in the green corridor, the famous green corridor, our demand from the UK to Portugal increased 10 times. So it was crazy. People want to travel. Yeah. And they just need to have the trust and the confidence to travel. And that's a lot to do with clear communication. Yes. From the countries to everyone, and this is difficult because we're competing with too many information from many places.
Yeah, the question is, we all were all aware of this change. We knew we had to connect with the digital, with the technologies, but one day we woke up and then we had to do it now. Was it a surprise, more or less, or we were just thinking about several things, maybe to put on the next few years?
No, I think we adjusted, and that's the good thing. We adapt. My biggest concern, I don't know if Grant has this concern too, but I think he has, is we can't go back to what we used to have. It will take time. And we can't make the same mistakes we did previously.
Such as?
Well, such as thinking that the more the better, not...
Getting everywhere very fast?
Yes, exactly. And not thinking that now, for instance, technology and digital, now we have tools that can help us. If they helped us during these months in communicating, in getting to other, into easing our work, internal work inside our corporations, then we can take advantage of that for the future. And one of the things that struck me most during this time, I would say, that's why when we talk about responsibility and regeneration, we always have to think that we have to reset. And in some cases, we have to come from ground zero and build on top of it. And the other thing is reskilling. And it was impressive. And I have to tell you that this was the best news from the pandemic, is when we started, we have schools, we have tourism schools, and we had to send our students home in March. So we had to very quickly adapt into having virtual schools, and because they're technical schools, so you have to learn how to cut onion, and you need cameras to show this and to exercise this. And we started opening this training to any person that works in tourism. And we had in 4 months 64,000 people trained in areas such as digital marketing, customer relationships, but most important in sustainability. The courses on sustainability were the ones that had more people attending. And this is a very good sign. This is a small example in Portugal. If we can do this in the entire world, we would be reskilling people for the future. And we have 400,000 workers, 64,000 had training in very specific areas in 4 months. So this is a good sign, and this is a good sign for the future.
So we can do it.
Of course we can do it, but we can do it, but this doesn't only depend on tourism. I don't know what Grant thinks about this, but there's a big responsibility. Yeah. There's a big responsibility from the consumers and from the tourists that they have to push the tourism sector. You can't go to a hotel, and Grant was talking about the new needs of the tourist. Mm-hmm. A 5-star hotel cannot be qualified by having slippers in their room or by having a person who answers your calls 24 hours a day. Yeah. If they don't have sustainability concerns, if they don't worry about where they put the water inside your bedroom and they still use plastic bottles, someone should say something to that hotel that that's not 5-star.
We already have that
I'm going to be fired.
No, you are not. That's good for me. I'm enjoying so much this conversation. That's not just the point of washing the towels every day, right? You have to go further.
No, that's
the first question.
That's the basic.
Yes.
And we have to build on top of basic.
Yes, Grant.
Sorry, Patricia. I think there's a real opportunity here as well for the industry to look at things like the Future Fit business benchmark. And I know Future Fit is a sponsor and been involved with this gathering. But the tourism industry has a prime opportunity to be the first industry globally to stand up with a benchmark like that, be clear about where we are, be clear about where we want to go, and help consumers see the standards and be really open to it. Be open to investors about where we're at, be open to customers and consumers about where we're at, and be open to governments. So that's just a perfect international standard that makes so much sense, that sets the measurement very, very clearly, sets direction, and provides real motivation for businesses about where to go and what to do when they're not sure. And we have that opportunity in tourism. We should take that opportunity.
Yeah. About customers, what should companies not make customers do, but what should companies help them do? Grant.
Yeah, look, I think it's information again, isn't it? It's sharing about what you do, where you do it, and how you do it, and encouraging customers to abide by the right kind of practices. So here in New Zealand, we've got a strong Māori culture. One of the philosophies is kai te atianga, which is the care for the land. So we have a national promise or pledge, which we took the concept from the Icelandic pledge. And it's the Tiaki promise. And we all, as an industry, get behind asking every customer who comes to New Zealand and our domestic customers to abide by that Tiaki promise, to take care of the land, to take care of the people around them, to take care of the communities, and to take care of themselves, whether they be in the water, in the mountains, or on the roads. Mm-hmm. We should stand behind those kind of pledges and promises.
Please.
I think. Well, what can we do with our companies? Why am I focusing so much on the consumer part and how? The answer is you just have to listen to the consumer and understand their actual needs. And if that is a consumer that has the same needs that you want to address, then that's a perfect match. I would say that clear information is vital, but there is also a responsibility from our side, and I have a very good example about that, which is putting in contact companies that have had a long track record of welcoming people and of taking care of the product and the service with technology and with companies who are worried about all these subjects. If you mingle this, then it's a very positive reaction. And the example I was going to say, 4 years ago, we go to tourism fairs like every DMO, destination management, goes. And we decided to bring together with our 100 companies, hoteliers, travel agents, tour operators, we decided to bring 4 startups. Some of them technological, some of them based on sustainability. We were very much criticized by many associations that we were taking place from the traditional companies to bring 4 startups.
New companies.
The second year, it was a huge success because those startups started mingling with the other companies from Portugal, and they did more business between themselves, and they had this door open that they would never have here in Portugal. That's why the Nasty Innovation Center has such an important role, because we need to connect the dots between all these very small and medium enterprises that sometimes are very much focused on their business, of course, because they have to survive. So we have to be the ones showing the way, or at least putting in contact with people that can do so much for the future.
But is it cultural, this resistance?
I think it's human, it's not cultural.
Okay.
Every person is resistant by
Something,
nature.
yeah.
And not only resistant, but we always want things to be as they were in the past.
Like we already know that.
Exactly. We want the same figures of 2019.
Yeah.
We want to have the same awards we had last year. And sometimes we have to think that the future has different things and different needs. And
different opportunities.
Yes, and this is a very good opportunity, if you can call it something.
Yes. I think
to think about this and to reshape the future.
Yeah. Grant.
Look, I agree. I think customers have a real opportunity to guide themselves and make their own decisions. But I completely agree. I think all businesses have an opportunity to align themselves with what a better future looks like. And there is no better opportunity than now. We've got a recovery phase to start with first, but building into that recovery, some of those system changes is absolutely critical. This is the only point that we've had in quite some time to make this kind of reset, to think along the lines that we're talking about today. So we've just got to grab it. We just have to.
Okay, but companies, just like you said, we need, or companies, tourism needs a lot of supporters, and the government is a big support. How can that be managed?
Look, I think government has a critical role to play, absolutely critical role to play. And the first role is absolutely guiding the direction. So guiding a multiple capital approach, setting up the regulations and systems to encourage it, to incentivize it, whether that be in electrification of the transport, whether it be in quality standards, whether it be in wage incentives for promoting living wage. There are the guidelines that aren't just about the governments giving out money. And then I think the governments have to set the scene from a community perspective as well, and actually reach into their communities and say, what do we want as a country? What do the communities want? What kind of tourism do they want? What kind of interactions do they want? And then that will guide and lead infrastructure, it will guide and lead marketing, and it will eventually guide and lead the kind of product development that occurs within an industry as well. So setting those systems, including investment incentives, setting guidelines, setting standards, and managing supply accordingly as well. So governments have a very, very critical role in assisting the industry changing in the way that it has to.
In Portugal?
No, I totally agree. Not only national governments, regional governments, municipalities, associations, because we always, and I think tourism is very much dependent on many areas, on transportation, on environment, on supplies, on everything. So
food,
everything. So the issue here is we have to deal with all these different components. And if we don't have a clear, as Grant said, a clear sense of what the country has to do. It's a matter of management, from city management, small village management, until a country management. And we can address that. We see very good examples in terms of mobility inside the cities, in terms of understanding how the city works. 3 years ago, we launched a program to give municipalities, we gave money for municipalities to put free Wi-Fi in the city centers. We have 2/3 of the city centers of Portugal with free Wi-Fi. Why? Because it improves the tourist experience, but because it gives data to those municipalities so that they understand who visits them, in which days, and they can change the way the city is managed. Of course, you will only see the effect and the consequences of this in the long term. Yeah. But it's very positive to see very small and different decisions that are taking. And our cities have changed. We're not exclusively, thank God, of the Portuguese. We're of many other citizens that come one night or 30 nights. And one thing that we have to understand is they need to understand how the city is managed. Collecting garbage. You know, and I know, and at my street, when do you collect the garbage? When the municipality collects the garbage. A tourist doesn't know. If they say in a hotel, it's easy for them. If they say in an Airbnb, where do they put the garbage? So this clear communication and information is something vital also for the management of cities and countries.
Yeah. You are focusing both on the communication, that question. This is just an example. What other examples do we need to improve? Do we need to change for tourism to work?
Well, the managing the amount of data that we get today, and changing the perception of that data.
That's a challenge.
Well, it's a challenge, but sometimes very simple data like mobile data.
We all have.
Sometimes it's much more effective in terms of tourism than just controlling how many revenues I had last month inside the country or in a city or in a very small region. And I mean, we can go for long talking about different kinds of data we can get from people, or the kind of people that visit the museums, or...
But asking for feedback, for example?
Or asking for feedback, or getting their feedback from different sources.
Okay.
Which I think
different ways.
We don't, and that will be something for the future. We have to be open to getting data from different places that we don't have to ask, but that is available to us and to our business.
And some things that we don't even consider as data, and they are data.
Or as important as it is, and might be much more important in terms of sustainability and protecting the planet and protecting our people than the data that we're used to gather, which is basically economical data.
Yes. Grant.
I think one of the things we haven't talked about in the last wee while is the economic impact of the COVID crisis and where the tourism economy has sat. And I think there's for us to see business invest more in the other capitals that need this further investment. We've also got to challenge ourselves and say, are we making the right capital deployment choices, and are we making the right returns on capital, and how can, again, those government systems help enable businesses make the right kind of money to reinvest in the right areas, to reinvest more in technology, whether, again, that be electrification or whether that be sustainable buildings. And that's where I think we're falling down as well. We're actually, in a lot of ways, not a particularly productive industry in some ways, and we've got a lot of businesses that don't deliver the kind of capital return that's required. And I think that's another challenge. And as we get businesses more profitable, as we get more investment, we'll get more investment in the right things, so long as government incentives align with that. So that's another real challenge, and especially at the moment, because nobody in tourism is thinking enough right now about where am I going to make my next R&D investment. They're worried about when they're going to pay, how they're going to pay their people next week.
Okay. I want to ask one thing. I think we have a question from the audience. I don't know if we have a portable microphone that we can get there. I think we don't have that chance. Please tell me if we do or we don't have that chance. I'm so sorry, we don't have that chance. Thank you so much. But you can manage your question to us, please, after this. Thank you, I'm sorry. Just for the last minute and a half, I want to ask you a message for the future. How do you think it will be the future, what the future will look like, Grant? In tourism, of course.
The future in tourism, if we do it right, will be about communities connecting with people and place in a way that enriches them and the society around them.
Luís.
Well, I have two messages. One is for Grant, because one of the rankings that we see always
is New Zealand.
No. It's the safety
they are always right.
ratio of countries, and we're always third. Because guess what? New Zealand is second. So my first message is that we're coming after you. That's my first message. My second message is sustainability is crucial. It's not only tourism responsibility, it's every consumer and every person responsibility. And we have very effective tools, reskilling people, technological. Digital is our best friend, and sustainability can and will be for sure in the future of tourism forever.
We cannot be afraid of the future.
Never.
Thank you, Luís. Thank you, Grant. Thank you all for being with us. And we will be back in a few minutes. Thank you.